Hello, everyone. Welcome to US Chess School class. This is Grandmaster Magesh Panchanathan, and we are going to see some games from my recent tournament. I just had a tournament, so I'm going to show you some things from this tournament. Now, I believe, Andy, you were playing in Charlotte last week, so I don't know if you have seen these. Let me see, where are you, Andy? Yep. So no giving out any secrets from the tournament. If I say I won the tournament, we'll maintain it like that. Well, I had a mixed tournament overall. I lost 3 rating points, so I would say so. I played something like that. But here's the painful part. My rating is 2503, and I was I'm so scared that I might go to 2499 now, and that'll be really painful. Then I'll have to play another tournament to make sure I'm about 25. But overall, it was fun because I had some really interesting games. There are a couple of games I had some big blunders, so that was always, bound to happen when you're not playing on a regular basis. But overall, like I said, I really enjoyed it. And I also like to talk about my games that are very recent because the ideas are still very fresh in my memory, and I can take you guys through the thought process and stuff like that. So the first one we are going to start is actually an endgame part of this. So this game was interesting too, but I'm not going to go too much into this game. But I'm going to jump right into the endgame, and we're going to discuss that now. Depending on how much time we have after this, I have one more game to show all of you guys. Okay. So this one is against I believe he's international master from Mexico, Luis Carlos Torres Rosas, I think. Yes. Okay. So I met him in the tournament. He's a very nice guy. We had a nice game. Now, I had a good position, probably much closer to winning early on in the game, and I kind of messed it up a little bit. And then we reached a very interesting end game. So I'm going to go right to this end game, as you see here. So can we all see the board? Want to make sure all of you can see the board. Yep, very good. So here it's white to play. Of course, the bishop is being attacked. And by now we are kind of playing reasonably fast. And this is the case, I guess, most of you can understand that towards the end of the game, we're always kind of playing fast. And that's why, to me, these games are a lot of fun, because you have to make some decisions really quick. That is correct. That is the game. By the way, no looking up. No looking up the game. No turning the engine on. I guess you should all know that without even saying it. But unfortunately, it's been a tricky situation with the pandemic, with the online chess going on. We still have to say, remember, there's no fun in actually getting the answer from the game or getting it from an engine. That really kills the fun out of it. So anyways, so here I played bishop to a4, and oh, nice, Andy. Okay, so I played bishop to a4, and now the pawn to c6 is the idea with the c6, c7, and I was pretty confident, so I have some good stuff and bad stuff. So before we go any further, can you tell me, what do you see in this endgame? I always like some basic observation. So what about some of you telling me what you see? Again, I don't want to move. I don't want to plan. Just 2 or 3 quick observations. Let's get this chat going. Come on. White has a C pass pawn, strong pass pawn. I agree. That's a positive for white. Black king is super active. Totally agree with that, right? Bishop versus knight. I would say that's actually good for bishop, bad for black. This king should be bad, right? So we got a reasonable set of back and forth here, right? I think white has some really nice pass pawn, but black's biggest compensation has to be black's king. That's just really good. Even if you saw the game live, that's okay. I still think there's a lot of interesting stuff in this game, and we will get to that. We'll get to that. So the point is, my opponent actually played rook to d4, and he's offering a rook trade. I hadn't really seen this move too much. I just felt like this has to be wrong, so I didn't calculate this move so much. In fact, when he played rook to d7, I was a little not sure what he was doing. His rook was on, if I remember, c7 or b7, and then he went to d7, and then I was like, okay, what is he going to do after bishop a4? And he played rook d4 quite immediately. So let's start with some simple variations. All of you in the chat, let's go. What would you play as white? Again, even if you saw the game, there are lots of mistakes from both sides that can happen during the game. So I love the variations to be thought about anyways. So let's see. Davis is saying trading could be too bad because Black's king is too active. I wouldn't jump to any conclusion that quickly, Davis. I would first look at all the options. If you move back, definitely you lose b4. That looks pretty bad. In fact, I would say there are only 3 candidate moves to really look at. Anika, I like one of your candidate moves. I would definitely say bishop to b3 is a candidate move. What else? Let's hear all the candidate moves. Now, f4 check, I think is a little too radical. I don't see a reason why we should do that, because after taking the pawn, I'm not so sure why we played f4. So it's kind of interesting, but not a big fan. And bishop to b5 and rook takes d4. Okay, fair enough. Bishop b5 is a candidate move, and so is rook takes d4. Yes. So we got all of our moves. 3 main moves. Now I want you to think about it a little bit. 3 moves to think about which one stands out for you. You can think a little bit and pick the one that you like the most, of course. The thing is, since like I said, again, I like to talk about these games that I recently played because I can immediately tell you what was going through in my head and how I was making these decisions. So that'll be much, much better for us to have the discussion. I'll give you a minute to come up with this. Okay, James has given something. Basically, in a minute or two, I want you to look at the variation that you think is the most interesting, because sometimes you cannot necessarily make these decisions to a perfect level. It's more about an intuition. Davis, I like what you're thinking about. That's very interesting. Owen, very interesting. Okay, Owen is typing an answer. That's okay. Yeah, in private. All right, let's get going now. After c6, I don't think d6 is necessary. I don't know in which position you're talking about, Anika. So I'm going to talk about what came to my mind. The first thing is definitely rook d4 was the first move that I was thinking about, because rook d4 is a lot more forcing, yeah? Because rook d4, king d4, and now the c pawn definitely is a good place to run. So right away, my head was in this rook d4, king d4 position. So I'm going to play this out. By the way, bishop d3 and bishop b5 are very reasonable. In fact, between bishop b3 and bishop b5, I'll definitely say bishop b3 would stand out more, because you will keep an eye on this pawn. But the problem is now the rook can move away. Yeah, I'm not going to necessarily take your rook anymore. So it's a little tricky. And I can also maybe try knight here and take with the knight. I mean, actually, in that case, I'll lose the f7 pawn. Probably just rook here or something like that. So rook d4 is definitely the more forcing one. So let's play that out on the board. And after king takes d4. Now, again, there are 2 candidate moves, and I think both of them look really, really strong. What are the 2 candidate moves? Type in. I got, most of you gave me one or the other, but I want to make sure. Correct? I think, let's see. Davis, you got it right. So Wagner, you have one of them right. Rohan, you have one of them. James, one of them. Andy, you got it right. You got both. Nika, you have one. Arnav, you have one. Owen, you have one. And Anika, I think you have given me the second one. Or Arnav. Yeah, Anika, you've given me the second one. Okay. So the idea is very simple. Yeah, both moves should be dominating the knight. So bishop to d7 is definitely one move. And bishop to b3 is another move. Now, some of you said c6. Now, this is the difference between a candidate move and a forcing move. So this is actually a basic explanation that I talk about even for beginners. A forcing move is a move you should look at. And that's any check, any capture, anything in a position, right? So if there's a capture that blunders your queen, you still have to see it. You should be aware of it. And that's what a forcing move is. Now, I'm aware of c6, but the minute I see knight e8, I'm not so keen on it, right? A candidate move is a move that should stand a test of the first 30 seconds. You should still be interested in this move after 30 seconds. And after 98, I'm not. Clearly, this is not making me feel like I'm doing something great. Okay, there is still bishop b3 that's possible. And even if I actually bishop b3, what can I do? Actually, maybe this is still a little interesting. I don't see, maybe not that easy to dismiss, yeah? Maybe f5 and bishop f7, knight c7, and it's kind of interesting. If you take, I take back. If you take, I take this one. So maybe it's not that bad, but again, I think the pawn is stopped. For that reason, maybe I can say that we can discard it. I wouldn't say it's like losing or bad for white in that sense, but I just am not interested because the pawn is completely stopped. And I didn't win any material playing that. So I discarded f6, c6 quite quickly. I would say in game times, probably in the first couple of seconds. Now, I did not see bishop b3 during the game. Turns out this is the best move. Between bishop b3 and bishop d7, bishop b3 is actually a better move. But my eyes lit up as soon as I saw bishop d7. And the reason is because what I realized is once I play bishop d7, I'm almost forcing a king and pawn in game. So how is this knight going to escape the trade from this bishop? The only possibility is h5, where I cannot take it. And h5 is pretty well covered by my pawn, because I can always play h3 to stop the pawn on g4 if you try to play either f5 or h5, right? And if you really desperately try to do both the pawns, at some point I'll fix g5 and I'll win this pawn. So for example, f5, h3. So I play bishop d7 on the board. f5 at some point, h3. Again, this is not right away. I'm talking about a general idea. f5, h3 takes, let's say h5, then I can go g5. And again, the g6 pawn becomes extremely weak. So overall, I felt like, okay, I should be in a very good shape. It's not easy for black to untangle. And I started thinking about king and pawn in game as soon as I played bishop d7, right? Because now I do get to trade bishop for a knight, and I will have these pass pawns, which are pretty strong. But they're not invincible. How would black usually break this? Remember this, these are ideas. This is very important that you should know this. Correct. Zoe is giving the idea, a5 is what's going to happen at some point. Or if the pawn is on c6 and b5, a6 is going to happen at some point. This is like the bigger picture, right? So at some point that will happen, and the pawns on the queen side will get all diluted. The king will capture all of that. The question would be, will that be enough for white to capture all the pawns on the king side? So let's play a couple of moves and then let's see what happens. So my opponent had to play king d5. It's like the only move. Maybe king e5 is also possible, but king doesn't make much sense. So he played king to d5. And what move should white play? I'll ask you guys to just do the chat. Again, stick to something natural. There's nothing too complicated here to think about. I think, Arnav, I like the two candidate moves you're giving me, James. Fair enough, the most natural move. Austin, I want to know why you're playing the move you're playing. Either you can unmute or you can actually chat, Austin, whichever one you want. Okay, fair enough. Now, you were trying to do this early on too, right? Is that because you had seen a better way to do this plan compared to what happened in the game? Andy, nice. Okay, very good. Again, there are some interesting things in this game to still to think about. That's why I would say, even if you had seen the game or anything, it's still worth calculating. Okay, Zoe, looks like one good thing is I think all of you are kind of familiar with the game and what you should be playing here, which is very, very nice. Yeah. So let's take a look at what happened in the game, and then we'll come back to this position to talk about what could have been better. I played king f1. Yeah. So again, the most natural move, but I see some of you suggesting c6. Now, it's a possible move, but I rejected this for one reason. I don't see a reason to commit to this move, right? Because if I play c6, king d6, I cannot play c7 anymore. I can play b5. Yes, it's possible. But I didn't think that this was necessary to do right now. At any point, I can play c6. Black will have to play king d6, and I can play b5. Yeah. So I figured it's really not required for me to play c6 right now. So I went king f7. Now, by the way, I think some of you are figuring out and suggesting a faster way to deal with this. And I will mention that. So f3 is a much faster way to immediately attack the pawn. Yeah. And also, you will see in a couple of moves why white's position was a little bit more tricky than what it should have been, is that black was able to set up some kind of a blockade. Now, if I play f3 here, black has, okay, a couple of options. Now, e3 looks way too slow. Yeah. Because now, should I start with f4 or h3? I'm trying to remember. e3, I know, but I will, if I get knight h5, I mean, that's still a win. Okay, so for example, I was looking at this move. If f5, pawn takes f5, pawn takes f5, and f4 will also win. Because after knight h5, king e2, knight takes, king takes, looks like I'm going to pick up this one. So I might not win a king and pawn in game, but looks like I'm just going to win a bishop versus knight in game. So, but knight g2, king f3. It seems like I should win this one. Well, maybe a little bit more calculation required. King e1, knight e1 and knight d3 is a little bit annoying. I have to agree. I didn't see that. Let's see. At some point, I want to play c6 king here. Okay, let's go back for a second. Can we avoid something? By the way, I've not checked this game with Engine yet, so I'm doing my analysis with you guys. So let's do this together. So I could play, well, f4 is being threatened, so I can play f4 directly, like you said, yeah, but then pawn takes g4 followed by knight h4 is still possible. Let's go back for one move, yeah. Maybe h3 first or f4 first. How about f4 first? Let's try f4 first, because if he plays f5, we can play h3. I think that's probably the best way to do it. Yeah. James, I think takes and f4 is what we did in the last analysis, and the knight comes to h5. So what I want to do, the reason I want to start like this is because when you play f5, I want to play h3. I really don't want your knight to get out. Can you take and still play h5? I'd be quite annoyed if the knight still gets out. No, I think you cannot play that, because I was just looking at takes, and if you play h5, I'll play f5. I think this should be winning for me. And I'm getting f6. So I queen the pawn, yeah? Unless there is some crazy tricks. Nope, I don't see any crazy tricks. Takes, push, and g3, huh? No, bishop g4. Okay, I'm not going to waste too much time on this endgame. This is not the point of the whole calculation. But yeah, e3 definitely feels wrong. I mean, you still have to calculate, guys. There's no way around it. But e3 kind of feels wrong. Again, I will tell you frankly, I didn't even see f3 during the game. I was playing fast, and my opponent was low on time. I was trying to put some pressure on the clock, but I want to make sure the calculation was right. But I definitely missed this. Now, if f5 is played, the point is very straightforward. We get this situation. So now the idea is my king walks in much, much faster. I just simply go king f2, king e3. And at some point, you have to play knight e6. No other way around it, because h5 will always be met with h3. Right? So let's say go king f2. h5 will always be met with h3. And your knight is just dead. So easy win for white. But anyway, so I made it complicated. I played king f1, and my opponent played f5. And now I think things are already a little tricky. And I'm going to pause at the critical moment after pawn to h3, and now I want the calculation to start. Yeah, so let's think right now. What is it that black needs to actually? I want to play the next move. So for example, f4 and king e2 also should be played. Hold on, I'm getting a question. James is asking, what about takes and g f5, g f5, and f4. So takes and f4. So the reason I did not like this, James, is because I really didn't want to give life to that knight. So this knight h5 is a possibility. I'm guessing bishop f5, bishop e4 will win. Now, there is a possibility to win with the bishop against knight in game. The bishop is clearly much stronger in this position, no questions about it. But I wanted it to be a king and pawn in game where I'm clearly winning. So one thing I was trying to make sure is that to convert this into a winning king and pawn in game, right? So that's one thing we've talked about. I don't know if we've talked about this particular thing in class. Conversion of endgames means you take your position to a known
dead knight
winning endgame. Not that you can find the best move the engine plays. make the simplest move. The simplest move is basically, like I said, going into a known endgame. A known endgame to me would be king and pawn endgame, and that's why I played h3 quite quickly. Again, could be not the best decision, but the point is, I wanted that knight not to get out from g7. f4 and king e2. Yeah, so I guess this is where we should start calculating. Yeah. What should black play? In fact, let's go with the game calculation first and then maybe come back here. I mean, black actually played knight e6 here. I'm going to start with this, guys. Who wants to give me a variation in this? Now, some of you have seen the game. You can still write down the variation. Remember this. Some endgames are very, very important to revise. Now, I want each one of you to give me one long variation. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes. So clearly, white has to look at what move, guys? What move are we looking at? Of course, easy. You've got to calculate bishop takes e6. That's the forcing endgame. We have been waiting on d7 for this reason, so we can force this into a king and pawn endgame. So you have to just make sure it's winning, though. So each one of you get one long variation with as many. I mean, you can give branches within brackets too if you want to, but let's try to stick to one main variation that's as many best moves as possible. White's best move and black's best move, and the conclusion in the end. I would like every single one of you to give me a variation. That's very, very important for me. Angelo, I think you had some connection issues. Okay, hopefully you're back now. I was asking one long variation for white here with a conclusion in the end. So we are calculating bishop captures e6. I'll leave the timer on so we'll know exactly when I can expect some moves. Those who have seen the game should probably have a variation by now. I'm surprised I don't have it yet. You still have to calculate though. Okay, so the first one to give me a full variation is Rohan. Let's see. So Rohan, I'm going to be very careful about long variations when I have a certain set of candidate moves early on. So the dangers of going 20 moves long in a variation that has, let's say, candidate moves or branches on move 3 or 4 is very, very important. Because if you didn't pick the right move on move 3 or 4, then you're kind of wasting your full variation. So I have to tell you, 1, 2, 3, 4. Fourth move that you played for white, Rohan, I think is not the best. And I think black should be completely fine in that already. So white did not play best options. So I think, Arnav, you did not play the best move for black on move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth move you played for black, Arnav, is not a good move. You did well up to that point. I think you conceded something which was not necessary. So Anika, you have to continue on that. Fair enough. That's the most logical variation. Keep going though. Keep going. So James, I think you skipped a move. Make sure you are calculating the variations very correctly because you skipped one move. Look at the last white move you played, James. I think you have jumped your king. Makes a huge difference. So it seems like an easy win. Davis, you're right. But sometimes it's always scary to not finish a variation because something might pop up right out of, out of nowhere. So I would say finish that variation, Davis. You're on the right track. It looks very reasonable to me that what you're calculating, but I want you to finish it. And he's like, I remember the game. Nice, nice. Remember this. Now, this game, if this end game happens in your game, Andy, you better not forget, yeah? And I know you won't, not anymore. Okay. Now, you do know this end game, Andy, but I'll tell you why I wanted to really show this game, because this is the perfect example of studying end games, having knowledge and applying that into the game, right? I was able to convert this game quite easily. And the reason is because something else. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a couple of more minutes to calculate this. And then we are actually going to switch over to another end game. And we're going to come back to this one after that, right? So we'll do that in a couple of minutes. So do your calculation, finish whatever you need to. I haven't gotten variations from each and every one of you. So do as much as you can, because I do want a variation from each one of you before we move on to another end game and look at it. So Ellie, I see the variation you're going with. I don't know if it's winning or what the deal is. So Zoe, I think, yeah, you're right. I mean, the direction is right. The only thing is, can black put up some better fight? I mean, like, the whole direction of the game is very straightforward. White just uses the queenside pawns to distract the king, and white takes the king over and walks and takes all the pawns in the king side. That's what white wants to do. And it's usually a very, very easy win unless black has something interesting, right? James, let's go to your second variation. I'm trying to remember which one. Okay. Okay, so that looks super easy, James. I think that's the point I want to make. It's not that easy. So you're going to run into some kind of problems. Okay, let's pause this for a second, and I'm going to open another board. Okay, so assume this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up an endgame. This is a very well-known. Actually, let's even start with this. And I would hope that every single one of you in this position knows this endgame. If you don't, I would say go read up on some basic king and pawn games. This is a very, very basic king and pawn game. And again, there is no shame in not knowing this. Is there anyone who does not know it? You can do in private chat to me. I would recommend studying it. But if all of you know this, I'll be very happy, because that's how it should be. This is a triangulation. Yes, correct. Right. Now, I'm going to quickly explain this because this is very much necessary for everything we're going to look at in this endgame. Okay. So the idea is very simple. When you have an extra pawn, you use it as a distraction. You go take the other pawn, you win the game. That's super easy in most of the situations. Except this one is a rook pawn. Yeah. So the rook pawn is a little tricky. Even if you pick up the pawn, you might actually make a draw. But typically, when a pawn is this close, you won't even lose. Why am I not able to get rid of this? Okay, finally, yeah. You won't even lose the pawns. You won't even lose that pawns, because when the king goes to b6, I'm still holding this pawn, and I'm going to take the pawn for free, and I can always come back to defend this pawn. So this is just an easy endgame. I don't even need a deflection. So the only thing I do need is to get to b6. And that I cannot do when it's white's turn to play. So again, I'm going to give you a basic explanation. This is very common. This is there in several books. There are probably lots of videos. This is the triangulation, and that is based on corresponding or related squares. This is a related square. Why? Because every time the white king is on c5, black has to be on c7. If black plays some random move like king c7 here, he simply loses because I go to c5 and I get to b6. So the first set of related squares would be c5 and c7. Now, by the same token, the second set of related squares is d6 and d8. If I don't go to d8 when you go to d6, you will win the basic king and pawn game by taking opposition and playing c7. For example, if I went to d8 directly, you would play king d6 and push, and an easy win. Yeah, your king goes to d7 and you win the game. So what we've established is two sets of corresponding squares. For c5, it's c7. For d6, it's d8. So which leaves you squares around it. And that's how you solve these triangulation situations, is that the king on d5 can go to both these two squares. So if white puts the king on d5, how do I make another color? Okay, got it. Then black needs to be ready to go to these two squares, and that has to be on c8. Yep. Hopefully that makes sense to all of you. Yes? Now, I know you all know the answer, but I want to make sure you understand the corresponding squares like this. Does it make sense so far? Does anyone have a question? It's pretty straightforward, right? What this means is that for each one of these squares, there is a corresponding square for black. So I go to d5, he'll go here. I go to d6, he'll go to d8. I go to c5, he'll go to c7, and then he'll keep doing this. As long as there are a set of corresponding squares, black easily can hold, right? Now, this is when to win, we make squares outside this set. We start looking at c4 and we start looking at d4. And what we can do here is simply say, if I have to look at c4, my king can go to c5 and my king can go to d5. Now, who can tell me in chat what squares black king can be on? There are two possible squares for black. Correct. Davis has given it to me. Anika, I cannot be in c8 on c7. I need to be ready to go to c8 and c7. So where will I be right now? Austin, I cannot be on c8. If I'm on c8, king d5 will win the game for white. Davis, you're absolutely right. Correct. Now I see all the answers coming in as b8 and d8. So because when I go to c5, black king should be ready to go to c5 or c7. When I go to d5, black king should be ready to go to c8, right? So black king has to be either on b8 or on d8. And the beauty is for d4, it's the same exact thing. Black has to be on b8 or d8. And here you break black's corresponding squares because I can go from c4 to d4 in one move. Black cannot go from b8 to d8 in one move. And that's why black loses. So I know it's kind of a roundabout way, but that's the pure understanding of this position. So you really need to understand the position on why you win this game, right? So king d5, king c8, and you can either go to c4 or d4. It doesn't matter where you start because black will pick one of the two corresponding squares for this. He's still fine, right? Now, if you try to go back, he can easily go back and he's just completely fine. But the problem is now you will go to c4 and now I want to go to b8, which I cannot do. And that's the reason you win this endgame. After king c8, now you'll go king d5. Remember d5, the corresponding square was c8. Unfortunately, black king is already on c8. I cannot go to c8 now. So I'll go to c7 or I'll go to d8. Doesn't matter. You will just go to the other corresponding square and you will get entry and you win the game. Now, this is a super easy triangulation position that all of you know. There's a slightly more, I wouldn't say complex, but similar situation here. How many of you know this position? Tell me, you can use the chat and tell me yes or no. Anika is saying yes. Rohan is saying yes. I'm getting some maybes, Zoe, okay? By the way, I'm not getting an answer from a lot of you in chat. I want all of you. Come on. Owen is saying yes. Okay, who wants to explain this? Who wants to explain this? Raise your hand if you think you know a little bit that you can explain. Okay, Anika, go. Take a shot.
So I think you can just use triangulation again here. I think the first move is king b4.
Okay. So what is king b4? Okay, what does black do?
I want to go to king c5, so we'll block that by going to king d4.
Okay.
Now I have to play king b3.
Okay.
And then he'll play king c5 probably.
Okay.
And king d3.
You mean king c3?
Yeah, king c3.
Okay.
After king c6, I can just go king d4.
Wasn't that an easy win, Anika?
Yeah.
We basically got to this position. So from here, I know you will simply keep pushing the pawn and we will go to the other position we already know, yeah?
Yeah.
So what's the fun in this? That doesn't seem to me like white had to do anything difficult because I think black could have put up a better defense. Thank you. Let's see if anyone else can do this. Rohan, you say you have studied this in Van Portlo's Endgame book, so I'm going to give you a shot. Go on, Rohan.
Instead of king b4, c5.
Okay, you want to play c5. What does black do?
King d5.
Okay.
Then there's king b4.
Only move.
King c6.
Okay.
Then there's king c4.
That seemed like an easy win. Too easy. Okay, I'm going to pause here and I'm going to ask everyone, what will black do here? Chat. Let's use the chat. Okay, Anika wants to play king to d4. No, Anika, thank you. So I got king to e5 or king to e6. I want to see, let's see, Davis, can you explain why you want to go king to e6?
So after king e5, if king c4, then king e6, king d4, white wins. But if king e6
easy,
first,
yeah?
if king e6 first, then white cannot play king c4 because king e5 and black is fortress.
Thank you, Davis. Now I'm going to explain this to you one more time what Davis just mentioned. Watch this. The whole reason this position is interesting is because the white king doesn't reach d4. So remember this, if I reach d4, this is an easy win because I can move the king up and I can move the pawn up. You need to know what's the problem in the position, right? The problem is that the king is not able to go to b5. And I'm not able to push the pawn. And black is kind of setting up a nice blockade from the side. What I'm doing is I'm blocking you like this. I'm saying you have no access to these 3 squares. And that's the reason you're not able to push the pawn. Now, when you played king c6 in your variation, you simply gave that access to me and you lost the game. And those who played king e5, you did the same exact thing. After king c4, now you simply gave me this access, right? Now, after king e6, king d4, I'm easily winning. So the best move, of course, is to go king e6. Guess what? Corresponding squares. Because the corresponding square for c4 is e5. When you go to c4, I want to go to e5. When you go to b4, I want to go to e6. Now, the problem is white cannot do any more triangulation, right? So king c4. So let's try king c4, king e5. The problem is the minute I leave c4 and I don't go to b4 and I do any other square, I don't care. Black will attack the pawn. And the only way to defend the pawn is to go to b4 and I'll go to e6 again. Or now you're right. Draw. King c4, king e5. You king b3. I won't go anywhere else. I'll simply go here. And go back. So this is an easy draw for black. So what happened? White, unfortunately, Rohan, we blundered with c5. c5 is a draw. You cannot play c5 here. So what are you going to do here? Who knows how to win this one? Andy, I'm going to go after you. You should tell me how to win this one, Andy. Oh, I got something from Owen. Owen, can you tell me what you're trying to do? You can unmute and speak if you want to.
I actually was at camp and you explained this.
Oh, Owen, you were at camp for this. Fantastic. I'm glad you remember this. I love this. When I teach something and you remember it. Okay, go on. Tell me.
So, I think the point is to try to do some triangulation with king b3.
Okay, so the thing is this, right? Since c3 and e4 are corresponding squares and b4 and d4 are corresponding squares, obviously for b3, what is the corresponding square?
I think d5.
Oh, I can't be in d5. It's illegal.
Oh, I mean is that e4?
Well, e4, I'm already there. e4 is a corresponding square for c3. b4 for d4. I think Austin gave it to me. Arnav has given it to me. E5, yeah?
Oh, okay.
So the reason E5 would work, Owen, is because I can go to this one or this one. Keep that in mind. Because from white king on B3, I can go to this one or this one, right? And I have to be ready to go to these two squares. So you're basically looking for a white black king square where I can go to D4 and E4. And that's why you come up with E5.
Okay.
Because D5 is just not possible. Yeah? Okay, now tell me, where are you going?
So from here, white goes to A4, then A3.
Exactly. So Davis is also pointing it out. That's right. A4 and A3. What we're doing is exactly the same, guys. Watch this. From A4, the white king can go to B4 and B3. So black king should be ready to go to the red one and the yellow one. Yeah, because I have to be ready to go to D4 when you go to B4. I have to be ready to go to E5 when you go to B3, right? So let's play king to E5. Now, when you go to A4, my key square is actually E4. I don't have D5. That's a problem. So I go here. B2 and B3 won't work, Anika. I'll tell you why, okay? So now you simply go to A3, and now I have to be on E4 again, and I cannot. Remember this, because you can go to B4. I should be ready to go to D4. And you can go to B3. I should be ready to go to E5. And I'm in my perfect square. I don't have any more, right? So I have to go to E5. Now you go to B3. Now remember this. When king is on B3, black was supposed to go to E5. Didn't happen. Black is already there. So I have to go to E4. You go to C3 and you got your access to D3. Right? The minute you get to D3, your king and the pawn and the king and the pawn will happily march up, and we will go to the next triangulation position, and we will win again with the same triangulation in that situation. And luckily, we are really, really good at triangulation now, yeah? So, or if the king goes to D4, king B4, and we win again. Same thing, yeah? So what we realize here is that this is a winning position with the A3 and A4 situation, right? Now, I want you to take a good look at this, right? There's a reason why I'm showing you this endgame. It's extremely important that you study theoretical endgames and you know them. Now, it's not enough for you to say, I've seen this in game somewhere and I probably have some idea about this endgame. No, it's very important to really know the concepts inside out. That's why it's absolutely not wrong to study an endgame like this 3 or 4 times, because it took me that much time to really get this. So what we know from this endgame is c5 is a blunder. It's a draw. And white can win by triangulating on a4 and a3. Okay, now let's pause and let's go back to our game. So I'm going to play bishop e6 on the board, king e6 on the board. Okay, let's play this out on the board and let's do the calculation now. Now, why is this even relevant? Because some of you are giving me variation where white is outright just crushing black. White is easily winning. So Austin, why is b5 so important? Why can't I play c6? Thank you. So I cannot play c6, a6. Actually, that's really funny, guys. I'm going to say this. I did not see a6. I thought c6 is losing a move. It looks like I would have lost the game if I played c6. Lucky, good. Well, I'll just tell you why I didn't play c6. Because b5, then the king has to go to d5. And when I go to c6, it has to go again to d6. So black is wasting a move, right? So I was like, if I play c6, if black plays king d6 and I play b5, I've just lost a free move, right? So talk about understanding a deep concept, and I would have blundered instantly that I forgot to see that a6 was a move. I didn't even see this during the game. It's funny. So anyways, the point is you have to play b5, yeah? You're right, Arnav. I think after a6, black would probably win that one. I don't see, yeah, black should win that one, yeah. So anyways, guys, let's do this variation together. And where is the interesting part in this game? What is even interesting here? White's just completely winning after all your variations. Black didn't even put up a fight. That's right, Davis. Yep. Well, I did figure out that c6 is losing a move, so I wouldn't play that anyways. White king is going to get to d4. Absolutely. This is no questions about it. So white is definitely going to play b6, b5, and c6. So let's see if someone can bring me up to speed up to a certain move. Let's see if someone who's not answered so far who wants to speak. Is there anyone who can speak so we can get to about 5 moves in this variation? All right, Austin, nice. I'm glad you're able to join us. Do you want to give us a variation here? As soon as you jump in, we'll try to put you on the spotlight. I just saw the position. Well, you can still figure out moves together. Anyone else? Anyone else who wants to give me a small variation? Again, lots of players have given me some interesting variations. So whatever you have, you can share it with me and we can go with that. I think a lot of variations that you gave me were all very reasonable up to a point. I would like one of you to bring me up to speed in this variation. Okay, so Davis, very nice. Let's do your variation. So this is a variation that I see a lot of you have given. Austin Tang, you can say 5 moves. Let's go Austin Tang. Unmute, tell me.
Wait, why can't you like mute yourself? Okay, anyway. So b5.
Okay.
King d5, c6, king d6, king d2, a6. B takes a6, king takes c6, king c3, king b6, king d4.
So up to this point, fantastic. Thank you, Austin. This is exactly what I was talking about, right? I know I'm going to get rid of my crazy arrows because it's probably going to make you confused with this. So I'm going to get rid of all of this. Okay, so basically b5, king d5, c6, king d6, king d2, a6, pawn takes a6, king takes c6, king c3, king b6, and king d4. Up to this point, I think we are pretty natural here, right? Now, some of you played king takes a6. I have to tell you, after king takes e4, white is going to win each and every pawn that black has, and it's an easy win. You have to try to find a better move for black here, and there is one. Zoe, thank you. Angela, thank you. Let's see if Rohan, you had your variation. Nope, Rohan, you let me take all the pawns. Arnav, correct. So the point for black is the only real try is e3. I need to slow you down as much as possible. If you just walk over and take my pawn, my king is on a6, you can stop calculation. Right? That's where you have to be very clear. Do not waste your time thinking about variation that's completely lost. So once king takes e4 is played, I just stop my calculation saying that's win for white. You don't need anything more. So then you start taking steps back to say, could black have done anything else? Obviously, e3 is the only real attempt for black. Now, after pawn takes e3, if you do pawn takes e3, I simply will play king takes e3. And that's, again, completely lost for black, right? Black king will be on a6, white king will be on e3. Too far, easy win. So the only real move is f3. Black does get zugzwang. I don't think black reached on time, Austin. Austin May, what you did is you kind of stole a move. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to go to the next step. I'm going to go up to this point. We are going to play this out up until this move. I'm here, James. So this is a critical point. And now we are seeing what is interesting. If king takes a6, king takes e4, black can resign. e3, f takes e3, f takes e3, king takes e3, black can resign. So the only interesting variation is e3, f takes e3, and f3. Now, who can give me a variation for white? So Austin, why did you go for that particular variation? I also feel like you have probably made it too easy for white. So Rohan, again, I think you made it too easy for white. Remember this, guys, black can put up resistance. Davis, very interesting. I don't know what your conclusion of that position is. So, Angela, I would really think about black's move after f3 because I don't think black gained anything by playing that move. It only helped white. So I think I'm going to play this move as well because this is kind of obvious. We have decided that this is the only real try. And then the king d3 is the only move. So this is the position, again, we are thinking. So James, why do we even have to, how do we even get to the triangulation? I mean, so I'm going to look at your variation, James. For example, after king takes a6, you went king d2, king d5. I'm just going to show this variation very quickly because I want to know what you guys think. King d5 takes here, and then let's say play this move. Now, is this a difficult position for white or is this not? That's the first thing we are going to try to figure out. I mean, like maybe white's winning quite easily. Maybe black has some interesting thing. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think black can put up any resistance? I would say this is an easy win. You're right, James. There's no confusion. You originally thought it's a win. It is still a win. It's an easy win because, again, I just need to bring my king to the other side and then remember my king and pawn and we'll just keep going forward. The only reason you're even thinking a little bit is because I can't go up this way. I don't even need a triangulation thing, James. So, for example, what does black play here? Let's pick a move for black. If you move the king, my king gets in. I think this should be an easy win. My king will go to e4, and I think that's an easy win. So you have to push your pawn. Yeah, that's super forced. Yeah, g5 looks like a very forced idea. Now, even let's say I take. I should win this one by getting my king around, yeah? So the only move I will not play is king e2, because if I play king e2, he'll play king e4. So what I'll do is I'll play king f2. When you play king e4, I'll play this. And then my king will go to d3. So if you go here, I'll go e1. Yeah, I think Davis, you're right. Nice endgame skills. Because what I'll do is I'll go around here and I'll get to d3. And at some point you will do this. And now I'll take the opposition. And now the king and pawn, and then king and pawn. I just keep moving up, and then eventually walk over and take the pawn. So this is just not even interesting because it's quite easy win for white. Black didn't put up a real resistance. Now remember this. The interesting part of the endgame we saw was if the king is blocked from entering this way by the pawns, black king needs to stop the entrance from this way. So my first question to all of you would be, what's the path I need to take? Is this necessary or is this simple? I have two options. Do I need to play king around like this to take the pawn, or can I simply play e4 and move the king over? Why is e4 bad, Austin? Tell me. I will need you to prove it to me. Davis, I don't remember the exact line that you sent me. But you said you don't know the result. You didn't tell me anything bad about this, did you? So let's see what is happening here. Black gets, so let's calculate this. So after e4, let's say bring the king in. King e3. Now again, I can start with g5 or I can start with the king move. But white doesn't have much of a difference. I was thinking if I should try g5 ideas at some point myself, which is fair. In fact, if you play king c5 now, I might win with this move. Because after takes, I get here. And then when you go here, I can simply go after this pawn and I win. Actually, I don't, do I? Because of king f3, my bad. So even this is not winning. Can I get king f2? No. It's interesting. But I thought that black's most precise move order will be g5 and after king takes. Now remember this. I want everyone in chat to write down a move for black. I want it to be perfect score. I think all of you should get this right. What should black do? Austin, Tang, good. Zoe, good. Davis, good. Angela, good. Royal, good. Well, Royal, I think you might have walked into the other one. Austin May, Rohan, good. You might have walked into my kind of, I wouldn't call it a trap. Austin May, you're right. That's not going to work. So Wagner, good. So the whole point is you want to play king to c5 because when I go king to e3, remember, you cannot let me go to d3. You go king c4. Now, this is exactly like the position we saw early on, right? So if I go back to this endgame, this is basically what it is. This position is what we are looking at in this endgame. So when you study these endgames, you might not get the exact same position, but this you can see this is pretty much a close resemblance of that idea. Now, white just cannot make progress because I can, if I go to f3, in fact, this move just wins the pawn right away to Zugzwang. And if I go somewhere, you attack me, you force me to come here, and then you go back there again. I don't think black can win, Austin. I will play h4 at some point, trade off, and make a draw. So, but yeah, it is still really not possible to win. So the first thing you have to realize is e4 is not a winning move. e4 is actually a drawn move. So you have to play king d2. Very, very important distinction. And now, again, black can play king c4, king here, and black can play g5, right? And after king takes pawn, king here. Now black has 3 sets of corresponding squares. When I'm on f3, they have to stop me from going to e4. When I'm on e2, they have to stop me from going to d2, which means when I'm on f2, they will be on c4. So how do I win this? Everyone should know this, hopefully. Davis, I like your endgame skills. You did correct. You did correct. You just have to play. I know what you meant, so don't worry about it. You got it right. Zoe, fantastic. Austin Tang, very nice. Rohan, I think you meant something, but you missed one part of the triangulation. You missed one move there. I don't think what you did is exactly a triangulation. Anika, that's just going back and forth. That's not going to help you do a triangulation, does it? Rohan, I'm not going to be able to go to E. If you go to F2, E2, and F3, those are the 3 squares that I've drawn the corresponding squares for Rohan. When you go to F2, I'll go to C4. When you go to E2, I'll go to C3. When you go to F3, I'll go to D3, and you will have not achieved anything. Royal, fantastic. That's what it is. Anika, you don't need to play H4. I don't think H4 would actually make it a draw because I'll take it. Yeah. Cannot play that. So the idea is the same. You go to G2 and G3. Do you guys remember how we went to, actually here I have to go King E5. Do you remember how we went to A4 and A3 to win the game? And that's what we're doing here from G2 and G3. That's it. So you go King G2. That's what I did. King C3. I went King G3 now. Now the problem is when I go back to F2, he doesn't have any squares. He should be ready to go to this one and this one. Because when I go to F2, he should be there. When I go to F3, he should be here. So he's in the perfect spot, right? This is the perfect spot for the king. So I cannot be here again. I have to make a move, and that's why I'm losing. Yeah, Zugzwang. He went King C4. Now I went King F2. He went King C3. Now I went King E2. And now he resigned. Yeah, insert null move. That's right. So this game was really, really exciting for me. Now, when I'm teaching some endgames, you might be wondering, what is this? All sorts of random endgames we never see. But trust me, this is your foundation. Your endgames are your foundation. You will not be able to do, make these quick decisions, because when you get here, again and again, I keep explaining this, is that you will have 30 seconds to make a move if you're lucky. If you're playing a faster time control, you might have 5 seconds to make a move. So you cannot figure it out at that point. So it took us a whole hour to talk about 2 or 3 endgames with the help of me, with talking about these positions for us to actually figure it out. Imagine you trying to figure this out over the board. It's going to be a lot more difficult for you to do that, right? So it's like your openings, guys. When you go to your openings, you don't try to figure everything out over the board. You study your openings, right? The same way, study more and more in games, and you will be able to really, really do this without figuring it out. So I was so happy because I won this game because I know this endgame. And it didn't take me any time at all. I was instantly able to recognize this endgame and say, oh, you know what? I need to just triangulate and then just easy win. The only reason I was able to do that is because I know that other endgame that I showed you. Endgame is the moment of truth. That's right, Austin. That's a very nice comment that you shared with us. I think that's a great place for us to probably wrap it up. Do you guys have any questions? I know you're all going to go and hit the books on endgames now, right? King and pawn endgames, you're going to be like, that's it. I'm studying it. No more stopping me. Will this be on YouTube? I don't know. I think it does go on YouTube, right? Derek? You're welcome, James. I don't know. Yes, they will be up on the ChessDojo site. Yeah, not a bad idea for you to actually look through this again, because again, once is not enough. Study it multiple times. So with that, we can wrap it up. Thank you, everyone. I will see you all probably for a different class. Take care. Is there anything you would recommend? I would recommend maybe Silvan's Endgame Manual for now, for starters. And of course, there's always Dvoretzky's Endgame Manual. Yeah.